Welcome to the How to Film Weddings podcast. This is episode number 14. My name is Nick Miller, and today I am joined as always by John Bunn. John, how you doing?
Doing really good. Really excited about today.
Great. At How to Film Weddings, our goal is to help connect wedding videographers and others that can help them grow their businesses, get better at shooting weddings, and improve the wedding industry. Today, I'm really excited that we are joined by Rob Adams of Rob Adams Films. I've actually been following Rob since before I even officially started making wedding videos. His Creative Live class gave me the push to say, hey, I can try this. I can do this. So I'm really thrilled to have you on the podcast today. Rob, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. It's a thrill.
Yeah, that's great. So you're a seasoned pro. You've been doing this for 20 plus years, and that's where we'd like to spend a majority of our time, is talking about businesses that last and that kind of stuff. But before, we jump into that kind of stuff, why don't you give us a kind of quick rundown of how you got started, and even maybe, some of the quote unquote antique gear that you were using when you started, 20 years ago.
Well, it was a completely different world for sure. When I first started the business, I was just right out of college. Not when I started my business, when I got into filming weddings. I was asked to film a friend's wedding, and I had bought some gear. I was working in radio at the time, but I bought some gear that was old Super VHS equipment, and this stuff was, deck to deck, Super VHS or regular VHS, and the cameras were these pistol grip, barely shoulder mounted cameras, probably about like 14 inches long, and they were really for the time, the quality wasn't terrible, considering what most people could film with, and I actually went back and just recently found and rewatched that video, and one of these days I'm going to post it just for pure posterity and for laughs. It's actually pretty funny. It's really bad. But of course, we're working with wedding video back then wasn't looked at as an art. It was looked at as a recording medium for posterity, for basically, just capturing the day. And, trying to be creative with it was tough because there was only so much you could do, obviously, right? So, it turned out that in college, I was training my teachers how to use the first iterations of nonlinear editing systems. So I did have that knowledge going in. When Adobe Premiere 1.0 came out, I was ready to jump on because I'd been playing around with the toaster, and I'd been playing around with
toaster, yes,
the old Amiga systems and stuff like that. So I already had this computer knowledge. So that sort of springboarded me. I didn't follow the video path. I followed my career more into radio and did a lot of radio, and I was doing radio production, and I was on air, and I was working at a TV station behind the scenes. So I was really I had my hands in all this different mixed media. And it wasn't until I moved back, I was living in Kentucky at the time, it wasn't until I moved back to New York that I got a job with a radio station there, and then realized that I just can't live in Manhattan on $19,000 a year.
What?
And this is serious. This is back in like 2000? No, it was more like 98. 99, somewhere around there. And I realized I couldn't swing it in New York on that salary, so I started looking for ways to supplement my income. And I had a buddy who was a wedding DJ, and he called me up one day. He's like, hey man, you got to come along with me on one of these weddings just for fun, just to meet girls. I said, all right, let's go. and I'm standing, I was the guy that stands behind the mixing console pretending like he's working. And I'm standing there and I'm watching the videographer. And at the time, the industry was so different because videographers back then usually fit a certain stereotype. And that stereotype was they were usually very big guys with very large tripods with car batteries attached to them, powering the camera, and a huge monitor and a big light on top of the camera. And they'd wheel around shooting overhead down on everybody for about 4 hours straight, right? So that was the industry back then. If anybody was doing anything creative, it was very rudimentary and a lot of star fades and wipes and things like that. So I'm watching this guy and I'm just thinking to myself, man, I know I could do better than this. So dinner time came, we're sitting around having the vendor meal, and I look over to him, I said, man, I hope you don't get offended by me asking you this, but I have to know. What are you earning tonight? I'm just curious. He's like, well, I have my own company. I said, all right, well, just give me an idea of like what you're ballpark it. What are you making on this wedding? He's like, oh, probably by the end of it, I'm probably making around $1,200. And my jaw hit the floor. I'm like, I don't make that in 2 weeks. I'm like, all right, this is what we're going to do. I'm going into the wedding video business. And it just so happened that at the time I was working in radio, I came across another personality in radio. She's very well known here in New Jersey. And she hooked me up with her husband who had a video production company and knew nothing about the new technology. Nothing. So he was like, man, can you teach me how to use this? He got an old DPS Velocity editing system. He's like, can you teach me how to do this? And I started showing him how to use it. And the next thing was I'm editing for him. And the next thing I'm like, man, your shooters suck. And he's like, yeah, they do. And I'm like, so let me go shoot for you. So I went off and I started shooting for him. And the next thing you know, I'm shooting and editing for him. And then the next thing you know, I'm like, man, your business sucks. Let me take over let me run your business. And that's basically what happened is I started shooting, we were shooting Orthodox weddings, 5 a week, or Jewish weddings. And, that was his whole market. And I was like, let's expand out into the regular wedding, Christian Catholic market here in New York, New Jersey. And he was like, all right, let's do that. So we jumped into that. And the next thing you know, I'm running the business. And then I'm thinking to myself, why am I doing this for 33% when I could be doing this for myself? And the timing actually worked out where he was looking to phase out. So I jumped out and I started Rob Adams Productions in 2006. And that's sort of how it came to be. I mean, I didn't second shoot for anybody. I wasn't working for another studio per se. I was sort of just taking what this guy had and building it up. And then that made the transition to my business really easy, because I could just jump in and say, hey, I already know how to run a business. Let's just get the LLC. Let's start building a client base. I started doing, bridal shows on my own to build a client base, and that's it. And from there, it was, 2008 was right around the corner, and that changed everything.
Love it. So that's 2008, which, we're 10 years later now. You went full, did you start full time at that point? I mean, did you jump right in full time? What was that first year full time in 08 maybe? What did that look like for you? What were you charging? What all was included?
Yeah, the first year was 06. I started my company in 06, and when I didn't want to pilfer clients from the guy I was working with, because that wouldn't be morally or ethically right. So I started doing bridal shows. I told him, hey, I'm going to start a website. I'm going to start doing bridal shows on my own. He's like, do what you got to do. And I said, I'll help you in the meantime, whatever I can do to help you out. And I went off and did that. And my first year, I booked like 7 jobs. And I was like, I'm going to try to ease into this, because I was still editing for him and that sort of thing. So I did my 7 jobs that year, and I kept doing bridal shows and kept marketing and building connections and networking with planners. And the following year, I booked 37.
Whoa. And what did that cost? Or what were you charging then, and what all was in the package?
Oh, it's actually hysterical, man. I was actually in my basement a couple of weeks ago, and I came across some old literature, some old business cards and brochures that I had, and they were black gloss, because that's what you did back then to look cool.
So classy,
right? And so I had it said on the front, Rob Adams Productions, wedding video for people who don't want a wedding video. That was my tagline, and it killed at bridal shows, man, because at that time everybody thought wedding video, that's so cheesy. But I was doing this crazy type of editing in my new business where I was very edgy. It was all shaky, not like shaky video, but distressed. It was all very distressed and cracked, and everything was light leaks before light leaks were even heard of. You had to buy these old Art Beats light leaks. It was $700 for the set, and I bought them, and they were standard definition. You had to overlay them, and nobody knew how to do that, at least in weddings. So I was just doing all this funky, crazy to make it look completely different, and I booked so many weddings from that. But I came across the package list in this literature, and it was hysterical. It was this is what I'm giving them: 25 picture photo montage of the baby photos, 3-minute bridal montage, 3-minute groom montage, ceremony recap. We called it the holy recap. Not even kidding.
Yes.
Then we had the full ceremony. Then we had a photo session recap, creative video. Then we had the whole reception. Then we had a highlights video of the entire day, and then we did a blooper reel, end credits, and I think there was a honeymoon montage at the end too, if they so wanted. Right, $2,600, man,
dude.
$2,600, and I was
the in-screen credits. I forgot all about those. I used to do those too. What a great add-on!
Yeah, with bloopers and everything, man. But I was so dumb because it wasn't an add-on. It was I'm going to give you everything, and it's $2,600. Because to me, $2,600 was a huge amount of money. Now, what I wasn't factoring in, and I'm sure this is going to lead into your next questions. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. But basically, I was stupid for doing it that way. I was giving the world, but it was popular, and people were booking me like crazy. busy, and then I was overwhelmed with work, and I had a huge backlog, and I realized I wasn't running my business correctly, and something had to give. And then ironically, right around that time, this is why I mentioned 2008 before, the DSLRs hit, and that just changed everything. So we had to rethink not only artistic approach, but we had to rethink business approach and how to make this work, because I couldn't do it all myself anymore.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. I mean, isn't it so interesting that whenever we first started out, like my top package, which was when I first started, was, like a 10-minute film and the whole ceremony and all the toast and the dances and all of that stuff. And it was like $1,400. And I was like, if anyone books this, like, I'll die and go to heaven right now. Like, it's so much money. And then now I look back on that and there's like, no, that's ridiculous, but it's just a part of the process of growing your business and learning and getting, everyone starts somewhere. And so you kind of have to learn what not to do before you learn what to do.
Yeah, and that's the problem I see with art. So like, in coming across all this material the other day, it got me thinking, and I actually just opened up my mic and I just recorded a video that I'm going to release really soon. It's basically all about how there's so many new wedding film businesses popping up, because I can tell by Instagram, by all these new accounts. I can tell by all these newbies coming in that, they're realizing how lucrative this business can be. They're realizing that it is an actual outlet they can make money with, and they're jumping in, and it's great. And the industry is exploding. But most of these guys won't be around in 5 years because they're offering way too much for way too little, and they're going to burn themselves out, and they're going to realize that the business is not sustainable or scalable. So I basically developed a spreadsheet that you plug your numbers into, and it tells you how much you're making per hour. And it's scary because even I'm scared to do it. But you factor in your revenue versus your expenses versus your not just your cost of sales, cost of business yearly, but your cost of sales per job, and then also equipment depreciation, the whole 9 yards. And when you calculate this up, factoring in how many hours you work on a job, it's scary. Most videographers aren't making more than a fast food worker. Yeah, if you really look at it.
Yeah, and it kind of leads into the next little bit. You're talking about longevity, but before we get into kind of what you're doing now, what you're charging now, I mean, there's a big window of time. If you could kind of go back and give yourself advice for when you were getting going, or if, we're talking to the listener that's been doing weddings, this is maybe next year their second season or third season, what advice would you give them, just for their business today in 2018, 2019?
3 words: do the math. Do the math. You might be, see, a lot of these guys I've talked to, they're like, I'm an artist. I'm like, that's fantastic. You need to learn to be a business person, because you can be an artist all you want, unless you've got somebody running the business correctly that knows how to run business. You're not gonna progress. You're not gonna be scalable, and you're probably not gonna have that longevity that you're hoping for. So, I mean, listen, I managed to skate by not running my business correctly for a long time, but that's only because I was in on the ground floor of a business that was exploding. 2006, I was not handling my finances correctly. I wasn't calculating expenses correctly. I wasn't running the business with a goal in mind or a plan. I was just like, hey, man, I can shoot weddings. Let's go out and shoot weddings and charge whatever we can. It wasn't until I started charging what I was really worth that things, got really complicated, and it got to a point where I'm like, man, I got to buckle up and sit down and come up with where am I going to be in 5 years. So I see a lot of that happening today, and you have to do the math. You have to sit down, calculate what it's going to cost you to produce every job, everything, right down to like a pen is going to cost you in your business, in your studio. Like, you have to factor your expenses. If you go into it blind, you're just going to find yourself either, here's a prime example: taxes. People don't factor taxes, both income and sales taxes, into their business model. And that's a problem, man. I mean, I know so many people that are behind and owe the IRS money in this business because they were like, well, I'm charging $3,500. Yeah, but you don't realize that Uncle Sam is taking 35% right off the top. And yeah, that might decrease after deductions and stuff, but you're still, you got to put that money aside. If you don't do that, you're going to be in debt to the government. You don't want to do that. So you have to sit down and actually approach it as a business. And even if you've already started your business and you think you're doing well because there's money in the bank account, or you see the accounts receivable and you think, okay, I got money coming in, you got to manage it correctly. And create a spreadsheet or use the one I'm going to release and just try to, put it down on paper as to, not just what you want to earn per job, but where are you going to be in 5 years? How are you going to fund your future? How are you, maybe you don't have a family yet. How are you going to fund that? Maybe you want to get married yourself one day. How are you going to fund that?
So as you say that, the numbers, and I think that is absolutely great advice. That's an interesting thing about this industry is you have some people that are totally in it for the creative side of creating stuff. And then there's people that are in it for the business, and some people that are hybrids of both, and, all that. It's just so fascinating to me. But as you're talking about knowing your numbers and learning that stuff, like before you release this magical spreadsheet that's going to save everyone's problems, where would you maybe recommend people start with that? Like what would be the first step in figuring out your numbers, and so that you're not losing money or you're on the right track?
Well, it just comes down to looking at your process. Look at what, your labor costs are. Look at what, if you have a studio, what the overall costs of that are, and put it on paper. It's just, you got to be able to look at it and do and tally things up to make sure that you are profitable. And then also look at, it really comes down to how much are you making an hour, okay? Because if I'm in business and I'm doing all this work, and maybe, yes, I love what I'm doing, but I'm only making 15 or 16 hours doing it, kind of what's the point? And yeah, we want to create good work and do a beautiful job, and that's great. But for so many years, my mistake was I want to impress people. I want to one-up myself, or I want to make the next film better than the last film. And that's great. The problem is that's not a business model that's profitable, because you end up investing more time than you're, earning money. So there's a balance between being artistic and just being volume and making money.
I think it's interesting too that if people don't know who you are in the industry, but you're kind of like a legend in our industry, you're kind of a pioneer. You've set the bar so high. You've done the creative live classes. You're excellent at shooting. Your videos are phenomenal. It's interesting that the advice that, somebody that's seasoned in a business that has longevity and, in our, field, their advice has nothing to do with shooting. It's because we can all, especially these days with the cameras that are out there. Oh my goodness, it's pretty easy to throw things on automatic, but if you don't know how to run a business, you won't be here in 5 years. And I think that
exactly,
that's the huge point. The taxes, all these things, and it's it's not sexy. It's not talking about a drone or talking about a gimbal, or it's talking about knowing how much per hour you're making. And so I think people overlook that. I'll get to that later. But somebody like you that is charging a ton for weddings and doing it the right way, 15, 20 years in, it's pretty awesome that your first thing is know the numbers.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Here's my answer. People go, well, what gear are you using? And I say, the kind that makes me money. Because
it's the best
honestly,
kind of gear.
It really doesn't matter. Honestly, everybody made a big deal. I jumped over to the GH5s and I got so much hate. Dude, what are you doing, man? Those things suck. Micro Four Thirds from a full frame sensor. What are you doing? It's calm down, first of all. Second of all, does my bride know? Does she give a crap? No. Do the videos look good? Yes. Mm-hmm. It's all that matters. I know guys in this business that are producing what I would consider not so great work, but they're excellent business people. And they're making amazing money, and they're doing it. And you know what? Their kids have good lives, and they're living a good life. And you know what? They've learned to outsource, so they're not busting their ass 60 hours a week. They're working, they shoot the weddings, they hand it off, and they wipe their hands on their pants, and they go, that's it, I don't have to do anything else. And they walk away with a few grand in their pocket. That's good. That's good business. That's smart. So yeah, you want to continue doing what you love to do. That's great. Go out there and make great films. But find a way to make it profitable. Because if it's not, then what are you doing? You're just spinning your wheels.
I will say too, on that side of things, you don't start out your business knowing everything, but the importance of having people in your corner, the right accountant, the right other people that that are running their business well to bounce ideas off of, especially for those newer shooters. They may not be making a ton right now, but if they don't set up the foundation for their business correctly, and did you have anybody that was helped you with your business? Was that all you? Did you just figure it out like I did all by myself, learning the hard way?
Yeah, I had nobody. Let me tell you, like even when I was running this other guy's business, he was running it so badly that even as bad as I was, it was better than the way he was running it. So we were just kind of feeling it out. You know, we were literally just booking jobs based on, hey, our work is this good. Our work is this good. We've gotten the attention of this new audience, because you got to remember, it was timing. It was timing. I don't think the same thing could happen today. I don't think anybody's going to come into the business at this point where I see this wide range of amazing work happening. I'm seeing stuff now that just blows my mind. I'm like, that's incredibly good, you know? And I'm not even going to strive for that level, because it's just like, that would be reinventing myself. It would be a step backwards, right? But the point is, it's like, now, if you try to step in and try to beat the industry and try to come in and innovate on work alone, it will not work. You're not going to stand out that much. Brides see that, and now it's just all style preference. It has nothing to do with that guy's work is so much better. It's light years better. And that's what I'm not boasting, but I think that's what me and several others were doing at that point. It was like, this is light years beyond what's available right now, so we could charge a premium. It doesn't work that way anymore. So you have to think of this as a business and not just like, hey, I'm going to blow away the people.
Right.
Yeah.
And on that note, I mean, I do think that obviously, you know, getting really good footage and doing a really good job with your shooting and your editing, obviously you have to have that too. What advice would you have for somebody, you know, when it comes to gear, shooting, just that side of stuff? What things, if I'm a newbie, or have been doing this for 5 years or less, would you say to focus on the wedding day, or focus on with gear, that kind of stuff?
Keep it simple. I think one of the major mistakes I see is people trying to take on too much too fast. Some of the best work that I've seen done, or I'm still seeing done right now, even by veterans, is simplicity. Static shots on tripods and monopods. Some of the best work I've seen. You know why? They're not looking at camera motion. They're looking at light. They're looking at shadow and light. They're looking at composition. They're not looking at, oh man, my gimbal is so smooth, and my drone, the quality of my drone is so much better than that Mavic Air, and I've got the Inspire 2, and holy crap, who gives a crap? We've done the market research. 75% of wedding videos are watched on a mobile device. All right. The quality is not going to matter that much in terms of, you know, a Mavic Pro versus an Inspire 2. Yeah, it's going to look great, but that's not what it's about. For me, I would just say, if you're a newbie coming in, learn composition, learn to look at light, learn how to operate your camera, learn how to anticipate action, learn how to follow action, and get the shots that you need. Get the shots you need before you get the shots that you want. And when you get the shots you want, make them the ones that really stand out. You're not going to do that by juggling gear all day. You know, I shoot weddings now, like in Manhattan, a lot, and the logistics of moving around. I don't even bring a track with me anymore. I can't afford to carry a slider around anymore. It's too cumbersome. It's too debilitating. I run with a tripod and a monopod and my camera, and once I get to the ceremony venue, maybe I'll bust out the gimbal. If we're walking around the streets of Brooklyn, maybe I'll have a gimbal with me. But I mean, my gear has been pared down to where I could fit it in 2 cases. Like it's not even that important to me anymore. And it's not because I'm old and have been in the business a while and I just don't care. I've learned to create my product without hindering myself the day of the wedding, because it used to be not fun. All the fun was taken out of it for me in 2012, 2013, when I felt like there was so much pressure to have all these devices. And you got to have the slider. You know, you got to have at the time it was the Steadicam. You got to have the Steadicam Scout, and I mean, it was just debilitating. And I felt like the quality of my work then, you know, while it looked great, it wasn't what I wanted to produce. It wasn't fun to do.
I remember, I think it was in your Creative Live class, where you know, a whole weekend thing all about filmmaking and beginning filmmaking. And someone asked a question, you know, what's more important to me, to buy a good camera body or to do lenses? And you said audio. Like you totally, you know, you went, that was the answer you said. And I think that for whatever reason, the audio component seems to be, that and lighting seem to be like the last thing that people add in. And audio is so important. So, I don't know. I just wanted to throw that in there, that has been something that has stuck with me for 6 years. You just saying audio.
Yeah, and I'd say that still today. It's not even, the camera is nothing. I mean, give me a couple of old Canon 60Ds. I'll shoot a wedding and I'll crush it every time. It has nothing to do with the camera. I mean, you know, yeah, there's going to be limitations and frame rates and stuff like that, but it is not the end all be all and what you should be thinking about. I do think good glass is important. I do think having good lenses is very important. I wouldn't say like, you know, get the cheapest crap you can find, but audio is way more important, because if you're going to be a filmmaker that incorporates audio, bad audio will ruin good video every time.
Mm-hmm. And I say it too, you know, I mean, we're in that, you know, $7,000 to $12,000 for a wedding video range. And I tell people that, like, if I shot it on my iPhone, I still think I could charge what I'm charging, because I am focusing on, you know, good lighting, good audio, and just building that brand so that by the time the day actually gets there, the bride already loves our company, loves everything about us. And so, like, they're not wondering if I'm using a C100 Mark II or a GH5. I mean, that kind of stuff, you know, I think we get so wrapped up in that we forget what really is important for the bride and groom.
I agree. And it's funny. I get a lot of people in the film and TV industry that hire me for their weddings. Like, I would say a majority of my clients are people that work in media. And it's funny because they go, the question that the guy asks me during the consultation is, hey, what are you shooting with? And when I say, you know, it used to be, you know, C100, now I shoot with the Lumix GH5s. They're like, oh, that's interesting. I thought you were shooting with Reds. Mm-hmm. I'm like, it just goes to show you that they really can't tell. Mm-mm. They can't tell by looking at the work. He's like, dude, I thought your work was shot on, like, you know, a Scarlett or something. I'm like, no, man, these are
Thank you.
You know, thanks. But it just goes to show you, like, it really doesn't, that doesn't really matter.
I want to, just for sake of time, fast forward a little bit to like 2018, 2019. Your business has been, you know, but you've been in business for a while. What is it, like, what is a typical bride book with you now? What are they getting, and what is, you know, that cost for them to get that with you now that you've been doing this for a long time?
I've really pared things down, man. I'm trying to get my average offering down to 8 minutes tops, because I'm just finding it. Let me put it to you this way. Not only has wedding video come so far, wedding photography has evolved, the whole wedding industry has evolved so much, but weddings themselves have become much more complicated nowadays. And that's because the DIY bride now, or brides in general, are just so much more educated now, and weddings are such a bigger deal now than they were in a different way, even 10, 15 years ago. Brides are out of their freaking minds, man. They want everything, and they want to fit it in a short amount of time, and they expect it to be all captured. And I mean, planners now are pulling their hair out because they're like, these brides are so much more demanding than they ever were. And you could thank those reality TV shows for that, probably. But, you know, I think what it comes down to is, you know, we you know, it's because these weddings are so much more complicated, we don't have the luxury of time anymore. Like, a photo session now is so much more rushed for me. I rarely ever get the time that I need or that I want to do what I have to do. So when I do, it's a luxury. So the way I'm offering things now is this. You could have 1 or 2 shooters. All right. It sounds very basic, but the opportunity for upsell, I'm all about upsell, 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 upgrade. So it's upsell before, upgrade after. Upsell before, upgrade after.
He's preaching my language.
Yeah. So they can do a 1 or 2 shooter package. That's a base. The 1 shooter package comes with a 4-minute film, and that's it. The 2 shooter package comes with an 8-minute film, and that's it. They're both 8-hour packages. Not a minute over 8 hours. Now, all the add-ons include extra hours for additional coverage. They can add on additional cinematic minutes to their highlights film. They can add on doc edits in all different forms. Ceremony only, toasts only, ceremony and reception. So everything's an upsell. Even the aerial footage. I do not include drone. Raw footage, definitely not included. I just did a campaign where I went back through all my hard drives and I found all my 2014, 15, 16, and 17 brides, which are all done, delivered, obviously. And I usually charge $1,000 for raw footage. I went back and offered it half off to these brides. You wouldn't believe how many I sold. Because I said in the emails, I did a whole constant contact campaign, and they got hit with an email every week. We are deleting your wedding footage forever. It will be gone. You will not be able to have it ever again. And now they've all got product, but they were all like, no, don't delete my footage. So we sell that. Everything is an upsell, every single thing. And we hit them with upsells before the wedding. So if they book me even before the wedding, I offer them, hey, this is what you got. Interested in upgrading? The wedding's almost here. We get one chance to do this right. And then after the wedding is, hey, guess what? We just discounted everything for you. Now what do you want to add on? So we've approached it from a very salesy kind of approach, but it's not salesy to them. We're not giving it to them as a sales pitch. It's just basic common sense the way we're offering it to them. So that's my offerings. Very simple. I don't want to be doing long form. I'm trying to discourage doc edits. I don't mind if they add it on. It's outsourced for me, man. It gets sent off, done. That's it. I don't see it. I don't touch it. So we're trying to make the process of shooting simpler too. For doc edits, we set up one stationary camera. There's your doc edit. That's your doc edit. I am not doing a multicam doc edit going forward. Why? Do they care? No. They just want to watch it back. They don't care. So simplification is key.
Yeah, and I think for what we're offering, we actually did away with package. I mean, we just have if you want to book us, you get 2 shooters for 7 hours and a 5-minute film. Everything else is an add-on because I didn't want to shoot by myself, and so the more that I've been doing this will be our 13th year, the more simple that I make it. I did a wedding this last weekend, and I didn't bring the gimbal, I didn't bring the drone. I was on a monopod and a tripod and got gold, and it was this freeing thing to me to not have all this extra stuff and just keeping it simple, like you're saying, with the packages and stuff. Did you want to? You were nodding. I didn't want to cut you off there.
Well, no, that is very freeing. That's a great way of putting it. It's very freeing to just know that you can go in it and look at light and be creative without being, I got to get the slider shot, got to get the gimbal shot. Now, it's nice to have those once in a while. Sure. But, you're right. And from the business perspective, it's simplification on the back end, too, because I don't need my process to be heavy on the back end. I want to have a life. I don't want to be spending hours and hours and hours on my business. I want to be able to produce a nice product, but I don't want it to be ruling my life like it has been the last 17 years. So it really comes down to how can I give brides what they want? We have very demanding clients. They want the world. The parents want even more. How can I go them into upsells afterwards? We're starting to do in-person sales where they come in and we give them options, after the fact. And that just increases the bottom line because all that stuff is very low margin or high margin, low expense. So we're looking at business a little differently now.
So let's take you back to 2007 when you had 37 weddings and totally overwhelmed. And we're talking to people right now that are listening that are in that boat. They charged way too little to get going, and then now they are completely swamped and overwhelmed. So you said earlier, in the podcast about scaling your business. I think you said that several times, that scaling word, and part of that is hiring other people to work for you, outsourcing things. So what would your recommendation be? What's that first thing that you would look for to do if you're trying to release some of the burden, but also, grow your business for the future?
Yeah. Outsourcing was tough for me. I had a hard time with it. It took me a long time to bring aboard editors that I trusted, to train them to do it right. It took a lot of training and retraining and training to learn how to train. Like the latest editor I hired, she's sitting right next to me, actually. She's over here working. She's amazing. She's been with me, about a month. And, my prior experience in training editors has led me to be able to train her so quickly. And, she has a raw natural talent, obviously. But, just being able to know how to teach and what to teach and to get them up to speed quickly in the quality that I want, that's invaluable. But I don't think it comes right away. You have to continually train to learn how to do that and to learn what you want them to know. It was a frustrating process trying to train editors. And I even tried the outsourcing route out, to these companies. Didn't have much success with that just because you didn't have a dedicated editor that was always working on your stuff, And I know a lot of people in the business who are successful and they have an editor that works, outside the office, maybe somebody they're sending work to, but it's the same old story, 3 to 5 years and they're gone. And there's a high turnover there. 3 to 5 years would probably be on the long side. So you have to be continually willing to acquire and train. and you have to train with simplicity in mind. Get them to do your minimum viable product and then build up from there. We've simplified our edits in that respect. Like I said, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel every time. So I don't expect every edit to outdo the one before it. Just meet this standard. Here's the standard. Here's the line. You have to match this quality. And being in-house, I can direct and I can, push things in the right direction if they get off track, or I can interject my own creativity into it. And then I still get to do the ones I want to do. Right. So, I mean, like I just shot a wedding in St. Kitts. I did that one myself. I'm doing this one. I'm doing this one.
That one looks beautiful.
Thanks, man. I was there for 3 days. And I was shooting for Hyatt in addition to that. So I shot for the property as well while I was there. So I had all this footage. I had so much crap. I was like, I cannot hand this to an editor and expect them to decipher everything that's going on here. So I was able to do that.
So, simplicity seems to be like a common word I'm hearing too. So I asked it, but just to circle back around and close that loop in the back of my brain, about how many weddings are you shooting a year? I know you talked about there's a 4-minute or 8-minute package. What does that cost to do that? And how many are you trying to do in 2019?
So I did 16 in 2018 total. And I'm shooting for 15. Mm-hmm. So 16 was the St. Kitts one that came kind of in the last minute. I was like, yeah, I'll
this. I'll take it.
Sure. Actually, I don't like destination weddings. I think they're a pain in the ass. And I don't know how guys like Ray do it when they're constantly traveling. I have 2 young kids too, so that makes a difference. Mm-hmm. And my wife's a shooter. She has her own business. So it's different for, say, a husband and wife team that are working on the same thing. Ray and Jess are working on their business on Ray Roman Films. I'm working on Rob Adams Films, and then there's Vanessa Joy Photography, and then we have Fusion LLC, and then we have a headshot business, and we have all these things happening. So it's really tough to kind of split up. So the destination weddings suck. So to answer your question, though, basically, most of my brides are jumping in at that, 2-shooter, 8-hour, intro. The only cost to me on that is the cost of the edit and the second shooter. All right. So second shooters in this area roughly go for about $800 to $900 for, that. Yeah, I know it's crazy. I mean, up here, talented shooters are expensive. I mean, it's $100 an hour on average for the most part. And I'm very generous with my labor. I always have been. That's how I just build loyalty. And then, an edit will cost me anywhere between $7,000 and $1,000, depending on the complexity of the edit and what's involved. So, the margin is really it's not, I wouldn't say it's super tight. I mean, that package starts at $6,000. All right. So, I mean, I'm getting them in at 6 right out just for my most basic offering. After upsells and after getting, additional hours, additional cinematic minutes, aerial footage, doc edits, raw footage, MediaZilla, which I charge extra for. After all is said and done, my average client's around 11.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Around 11. And then, that's before, and then that brings me to the next portion of it, which is after sales. So, I mean, we offer everything from video books to movie poster prints to, even cinematic minutes after the wedding, before we edit, teasers, anything they want. Basically, we just try to talk them into, to buying anything after the fact, and that can increase the sale by another $2,000 to $3,000.
And would you say, with that, we're talking longevity and building business that lasts. I mean, you're able to do 16 weddings and probably make more than you did shooting 25 weddings 5-6 years ago.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Would you say you're building with the branding that you're doing and the relationship that you're building with them? How does that factor in? Are you in communication with them a lot during their edit, or how are you doing those upsells? Are they all at the after sales meeting?
It's funny. Our experience is really based upon only a couple points of contact. So, obviously we have an initial meeting with them to book them. Then we meet with them for the creative consult where we talk about the itinerary of the day. And I even keep those very short. Those are Skype or phone meetings. This is hey, let's go over your day. What do I need to know? I don't want to be spending a lot of time because my time is valuable. I'm not going to sit here and spend 3-4. I know guys that take their clients out for beers and stuff. I'm like,
I do that.
Really, dude? See, all right. So here's the thing with that. Great. That's cool. And I'm sure it builds all kinds of love and a great relationship between you and the client. But where's the ROI, right? So like, yeah, maybe they're going to refer you to her friends, but guess what? Based on what I deliver, I get a lot of referrals, and I spend minimal time with my clients. I think a lot of my clients, and maybe it's just the Northeast and New York in general, they don't have time for that crap. It's funny. I ask a bride to come in for a sales session or just to sit down and go over like, hey, here's a teaser. Let's sit down and go over this together. They're like, can you just send me a link? Like, I don't have time for that. If I asked my brides to go out for a beer, they'd be like, what? So it's just kind of weird. Like, I mean, and if that works, that's great. Sure. But my process has been, you know what? Hey, listen, I'm going to do a kick-ass job for you. Do you trust me? Do you trust my work? You've seen my work. Do you trust my vision? We love your work. Yeah, we trust you. Okay, great. This is your itinerary. Let's go over it real quick. Boom, you're done. Day of the wedding. I show up. Hey, how's it going? Good to see you. I'm going to be out shooting your wedding. I'll see you later. Okay, bye. Then after the wedding, it's just like, we have all kinds of email automations in place. I mean, we've set it up all through 17 Hats where they get constant contact, even like they get tip emails before the wedding. So they get a series of 4 emails before the wedding in a drip campaign that basically say, hey, here's the best way to make your toast look great. Here's the best way to keep, mom from chewing gum the day of the wedding. All these different things that they're lighthearted and sweet and fun, but it's just meant to, have contact with them, but not in a direct way. And then after the wedding, we set up a call with them just to be like, hey, let's just go over. Listen, I got some great stuff with you. You have an 8-minute film. I think we could easily make an 11-minute film out of this. This is what it would cost. I'm going to discount the price for you, blah, 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 blah. And then we have contact there. And then when I deliver the film, I send a link and that's it. Goodbye. See you later. I don't want to date my clients for 2 years. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I see my wife doing that. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, and I don't do too much of the meetings afterwards. We do one meeting, for dinner or coffee or drinks or whatever. A few months out from the wedding, giving them a little bit of like face to face in Oklahoma is a little different than New York City, obviously. But just like, hey, let's go grab a coffee with your planner, with your mom, people that are spending money. And then that way they don't think there's some random video guy just trying to upsell them. I just started doing that last year and that bumped our sales up $1,500, $2,000 per wedding. So I was like, yeah, it's worth a cup of coffee. I'll do that. But I mean, a lot of that, they book us a year out and stuff like that. And then it's like, hey, 6 months before, 3 months before, let's just get together and chat. But like you're saying too, the amount of time, if it wasn't yielding any extra money, screw it. I'm not wasting my time. I got kids. I got a life too. So you got to do what works for you for sure.
Yeah, I think I'd rather focus my energy there on the after sales because I mean when they come in afterwards, it's a whole different story. They're excited, they're pumped. I mean they're on this high, this emotional high. I'm going to leverage that. I'm going to use that to my advantage. Before the wedding, of course, they're excited, but they've already spent a load and they haven't opened any envelopes yet. Once they open those envelopes, then I'm like, let's go. Let's talk about what we can add on for you.
As we, I'm going to shift this just a little bit, as we're talking about, building a sustainable business. A couple of years ago, I made a big mistake of kind of quit networking. Like, I kind of quit, with it was just taking time and that kind of stuff. And so, and as I've come to realize, networking with other vendors in my area is such a huge thing in building your business. So can you maybe touch on that, like your experience with, your relationship with other vendors and how they have helped you, continue to do this for decades?
Yeah, man. I haven't focused, I'll be honest, I haven't focused so much on vendor to vendor relationships. I focus more on, let me say vendors, meaning, like other videographers and photographers, because the second I married a photographer, I stopped getting photographer referrals. They were just like, I'm not sending you business. So how do I know you're not just going to refer them to your wife? And I would never do that. But, I still get some that do send me some business. But it used to be before I married Vanessa. That was huge, man. I was getting a lot of it because photographers liked working with me. I was different than these other guys. Like I wasn't strapped to a car battery. So they were like, this guy's fun and new, but everybody's fun and new now. Everybody's fun and cool, right? So the draw for me now is planners. I go after high-end planners, very high-end planners, and I schmooze them. I schmooze the crap out of them. I send them gifts. I try to engage with them as much as possible. Vanessa does a lot of that legwork for me too, because I'll be honest, having her and her status in the industry, and she does so much with style shoots and working for Kleinfelds. We have such a great in at Kleinfelds. I've shot like 4 brides who work at Kleinfelds. That's a big deal. So we go after the planners where the money is. And not to say that, I mean, we don't have DJ friends and we don't have other people in the business, but we don't go to like networking mixers like in our area. It just doesn't do anything for us. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying it's not something that we do because it doesn't really yield anything for us. But, you know, I think the shift to all this online networking is kind of the future. That's sort of where everything's going. So like, yeah, the Facebook groups are big. I mean, there's a lot of negativity, as we all know. But you know, the online presence is sort of going to be the future of that. And I'm trying to figure out like, where does that fit in for me in terms of like, you know, instead of going out and taking planners out to lunch, is there a way to do this virtually that's a little bit easier, you know, I guess, so to speak? Maybe I'm just lazy in my old age.
Well, I mean, you know, after doing it, you know, you've been around the sun enough times in this business, you know, you realize that like you can't be everything to everyone. And whenever I first started, I wanted to be a megaphone, and I wanted everybody to want to, you know, hire Redeemed Productions to like film their wedding. And like, if you didn't like my films, I need to make them more like vanilla so everybody would like them. And, you know, I'm going to hang out with everybody. And it's like, you know, I know and can see your heart in the fact that it's like, you don't not want to have friends in the industry or things like that, but you are realizing the value of time, and that's the asset you don't get back. And so, you know, if you're going to spend time or money with somebody, you want to see, you know, the potential for a long-term result with it. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm spending, you know, I'm not like sending DJs like a Starbucks gift card and saying, hey, it was great to work with you. I'm, you know, calling or buying or doing something for those higher end wedding planners in the area, and making those relationships, and not in a weird, you know, I don't want our listeners to think that it's like this weird car salesman kind of way, but it's like a genuinely kind, you know, nice way that I'm reaching out to these people and building these relationships and making them an extra like 2-minute clip of their reception room that they got set up, and just taking really good care. And that schmoozing, you know, is to me cost of doing business right with a customer or with a
yeah. And I agree. And I think if the video business is your sole primary focus, it's your driving force of income, and you know that's your only income, and it's your only project, your only work project, that is very valuable, because you know you're investing everything in that. Whereas for me, we have our hand in so many other things. We're doing things outside of Rob Adams Films is not even my primary source of income anymore. You know, we're doing so much other stuff. So for me, it's kind of like, yeah, time is of the essence. What's gonna be the biggest ROI for my minute? So it's hard for me to kind of relate to somebody who's going to be, you know, just coming in and focusing everything into that. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I did that for a long time. I did like, you know, hey, here's a show reel of the venue. Here's for the planner. Here's all for the florist. I made a big reel for the florist. I found myself editing so many of those, though, that it was cutting into my already backlogged workflow. And I had a backlog for a long time. And that just is no way to live.
I'll jump in too and say, like, in 2018, I might have done like 1 or 2 extra little things for planners, but like I have spent the last 5, 6, 7, 10 years building relationships with these people to where like now I've built this machine. And I don't have, you know, like this year's our most profitable year yet. And I spent the least amount of time this year. And, you know, it's like, you know, people are like, well, how are you charging what you're charging? And it's like, well, I did what I had to do and just worked this business so hard for so long, where I'm I'm actually reaping the benefit of what I've done. So, you know, keeping those plates spinning and taking good care of people this year and just making sure. But planners hire me, you know, or like our clients now, usually the planner is hiring us. You know, it's like not even a lot of them. The brides like reached out and said, hey, I want to book, you know, Redeemed Productions or whatever. But a lot of time it's like, oh, this country club, the planner, you know, the person that's over that says you're going to get Redeemed Productions to do your video. It's going to be $10,000. And this is what, and they're like, great, you know, and so, so yeah, I mean, I think that that's really important in realizing that like what you're saying, yeah, you don't have to do as much of that anymore. You're still cultivating those relationships, but once you're building this brand, people know if they hire Rob Adams, they're going to get this. And when you're only wanting to get 15 clients, you know, that's pretty much figured out for you. You probably aren't having to spend a ton on marketing at this point. I want to talk about that. Like, are you spending money on marketing? And then also just like identifying your ideal client, what that means to you. You know, I was talking about the megaphone and reaching everybody. Like, how do you identify if you're a newbie, your ideal client, that kind of thing?
All right. Well, as far as marketing goes, no, we don't spend $1 on marketing or advertising at this point. I pulled all my listings online. I exist on those platforms, but I don't pay to be on those platforms in any way. Because it just we're trying to pare down. We get so many leads that we're just trying to pare down the ones that are actually quality and that are actually serious. And 90% of what comes through the website is they're just not serious about paying the prices. It's like you said, the planners, the ones that bring us the business. That's where we get primarily most of our jobs, or people in media. Like I said, I just did the producers for Fox and Friends last year. That they recognize quality based on, hey, you're in the industry. So for somebody coming in, I can't stress this enough. I think that for somebody coming into the business, being on the Knot and Wedding Wire is huge. You need to get out there somehow. Nobody's just going to know you exist. I mean, you and I have built this up for years and years and years of cultivating relationships and cultivating a brand and a reputation. People who just come into the business now don't have that. So they need to start somewhere. So yeah, you got to get in the mix. You got to get into the battle royal and start duking it out, because you're going to be faced with other companies that are probably in the same price point, doing the same quality of work, and you have to differentiate yourself somehow. But in order to do that, first you got to get in the ring, right? So that would be the Knot, Wedding Wire, Instagram ads. I've been booking so much business off Instagram, or potential business, meaning like just a lot more leads are coming through Instagram now than anywhere else. The website still generates, but it's more like forget Facebook, forget anything else like that. With relevant tagging on Instagram, we're reaching a much larger, more specific demographic, and it's fantastic. So we're really leveraging our efforts into that. I have a social media person that does my Instagram, and that's where we're focusing efforts now, because with all the algorithm shifts and changes in social media and trends, right now the it thing is Instagram. I know a lot of photographers who are dumping their websites, not even giving a crap anymore, because Instagram, their page has become their new website. So that's where we're focusing, and I think as a newbie, you need to be doing that too. You need to be building an online social media presence and engage with your audience. It's not enough to just do posts and relevant tags. You got to engage every comment, respond to it. Every comment, you got to boost that algorithm. Get in there and do it. Read books on this stuff. Read, .com secrets, and there's like a million books just based on how to play the social media game. And as a content producer, and that's what we all are, you need to learn how to play that game. Have a YouTube presence of some kind. That's actually one of my goals for 2019 is to increase my YouTube presence. Not just putting up the latest video that I made, but actually creating a lot of content for YouTube. Yeah.
Very cool. So moving a little, we've got a little bit of time left here, but I want to talk just about with new people too, like identifying that ideal client is the next little portion before we kind of wrap up and talk about a couple things you're doing today and what you're working on now. At the beginning, did you have an ideal client? How did you decipher that? Did it take some time to kind of see who you liked working with? What does that mean? These buzzwords, identify your ideal client.
That's a fantastic question. Nobody's asked me that question yet, and it really, now that you said it, that's an excellent question. Back in the day, it's funny, you'll laugh at this, but back in the day, my ideal client was the one that would go out and have a beer with me.
Oh, the irony.
Oh, the irony. That was the ideal client. When I was charging $2,600, that was like, hey, who can I make friends with? And I'll tell you, that brought me a lot of business, So just because I'm doing it now and it works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for a newbie or somebody coming into the business. So, that was big. That was my ideal client then was Irish Catholic, down the shore brides who wanted to have a beach wedding. A church ceremony, but then a reception near the beach. That was my ideal. I could charge $3,000 all day long for that client, and they'd book me like crazy. And then it shifted to when the DSLRs came out. It was more of a high-end client. It was more of like this. We live in a very affluent area of central New Jersey. It's Monmouth County. There's Rumson. I live in the town where Bruce Springsteen's from. It's like there's a lot. There's a lot in this area. A lot of celebrities. So this area is very rich in elitists, if you will. And these people spend money. So my client became more of like this, hey, you're doing something that nobody else is doing. How much is it going to cost me? And it was at that point we broke, I'll never forget when we broke the $7,000 mark on a wedding for the first time. I was like, this is insanity. This is 2008. It was like 2009. 2010, I did every wedding of mine. I didn't have a wedding under $7,000. And that was amazing. And I did like 28 that year or something like that. But the backlog was ridiculous because I was editing everything myself. But the average client, the ideal client now is the client that doesn't even look at my pricing. That's my ideal client. I want a client that goes, Danielle Rothweiler is a planner I work with a lot. She's been on all the reality shows and stuff like that. She calls me up and she goes, I got a client for you. I'm like, okay. She's like, just send me the contract. Like, that's the clientele that I want. I'll still go through the sales process with them and explain everything and say, this is what you can do. I remember when Snooki called me to do her wedding, she goes like this. She goes, and I don't do a lot of celebrity weddings. I'm not that guy, right? I don't even do like NFL players. I don't get like the sports stars for some reason. I just never fell into that market. I get like a lot of people who have money, but they're just business people or media. And Snooki called me up and she goes, so I heard you're the best. Why should I hire you?
Great Snooki impression.
and I just, without missing a beat, I said, well, you just said it. And it was just the confidence that I just put out there. And it wasn't like being arrogant. It was just confidence. It's like, yeah, you just said it. You were told I'm the best, so book me. And she goes, well, how much is it going to cost? I said, I'll send you a contract. And that was it. You know, I didn't even have to like go through a process with her. That's the ideal client. Now, I'm not going to, they're not all like that. There are some that have to be convinced. But that's the ideal client. And I'm trying to, every marketing move I make is to gear and steer more towards that client. I'm trying to figure out, where are those clients? Where can I find more of those people that I don't have to drive to Boston or go to Newport, Rhode Island? I want to find them in New York City. I want to find them in New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, maybe Long Island. And I want to stay in my backyard.
And so if you're a newer person defining, how would you get to defining that, like, today or for 2019, what should people be looking for to be able to identify who their ideal client is?
Well, yeah, you have to do a little market research. You have to study your demographic, first of all. Know your audience. Know who you're marketing to. I mean, if your area is full of, like you said, oil people, and they're the ones who hold all the cards and have the money and the political influence, find out what they're buying. Find out what those people, pay a marketing research firm to find, give you statistics on the audience, like where are they spending their money, and then advertise in those places. Now, it's kind of hard. You're not going to put a billboard outside the local Neiman Marcus, as a wedding video company. But what you can do is find out where they live on Instagram. Find out what are they looking at on Instagram. What are these people researching online, and target online ads to those places. I think that once you get in with a certain clientele, if you manage those clients correctly, more will come. This is still a very big referral business. Everything we do is based on referrals and word of mouth. So you really need to cultivate that before anything else. But if you're really new and you don't have any of that, you got to do the math first of all. Find out what your initial capital investment's going to be. What are you going to invest in your business? What's going to be your goal for the first year, and out of that, how much is your expenses versus profit, and then figure out in your first marketing budget where your clients live. And I can't speak for everybody. I have no idea where that might be in even Southern California. I have no idea where that is in Northern Kentucky. Like, I couldn't tell you, like, who has the money in these places. Talking to Jordan Bunch. I mean, Jordan's like, yeah, we've tapped into this really big market down here in Austin, Texas. And I'm like, I wouldn't even know where to start. Unless you're from the area and you know the area well. Like, I could never move to Nashville, Tennessee and start a wedding business and be like, I'm just going to plug into the millionaires here. Right. It would be very difficult to do that.
It just takes that slow drip over time and finding those clients and doing great work. And we preach that a lot here on the podcast, just slowly building that and taking, great care of people, getting those referrals. And it kind of spirals upward the more that you're around, the more you take care of people. And if you're intentional, that's when it keeps going up and up and up.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
So we're running short on time, but real quick before we end things up, what's kind of your plan for 2019? I know that you started to do a lot more education stuff over the last few years. Like, do you have any plans for that? And then where can people find you if they want to learn more about you?
Yeah, I pulled like a big. it's interesting. The dynamic has changed so much. I have an editing course that's sitting on a drive ready to be released. We haven't released it, and there's a couple different reasons. Number one, my wife started getting asked to produce a lot of content for many different outlets, and we've been focusing on doing a lot of live camera switch, training, educational products for her, like in the field of, on location stuff. So we've been producing so much of that and learning new ways to market that via email campaigns and drip campaigns and all, that's taken up so much of our time. So we kind of put my course on the back burner just because we wanted to perfect that process before we target that and where that's going to get sold. I was collecting email addresses and trying to figure out who wants what, and I produced this course, and now I'm thinking I'm going to have to go back and redo the whole thing. So because it's all about, how we market it. So that's primarily one of the goals for 2019 is to produce educational content and just find out who in the wedding video business needs what. And what I'm finding is a lot of that has to do with business. A lot of it has to do with, how to run a business, because there's a lot of courses you can take on just how to run a business, but nothing that's really market specific to our business. So I'm going to focus a little bit on that and generally just focusing on the other projects that we have going on behind the scenes here. And like I said, Rob Adams Films is still, near and dear to my heart, and it's still, I want it to run correctly and I want to do great weddings and stuff, but it's not like the primary driver moving into 2019.
Okay. Well, Rob, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. We really appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. And to all our listeners, we hope that you have a great new year, and 2019 works out really well for you and your business as you scale things up. And until next time, see ya.
See ya.